Folks, what's going on? Heir of Carthage here, and welcome to a continental battle. Continents will collide. I know. Anyway, so no, we're not trying to form Pangea. We're playing a themed 4v4 where we're pitting different continents against each other. We could do this again more if we want. The problem with this, as a theory, is that there are some continents with a lot more factions on them than others, so it may get a little tricky, like Ulthuan kind of out on its own. Nagaron being all dark elves. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Anyway, this continental clash here is going to be the Lustria versus the Southlands. So basically, the players on the Lustria side, which is this team here, had to pick a faction that starts on the Mortal Empire's campaign map in Lustria, and then the other side had to pick a faction that starts in the Southlands. You will see a Wood Elves, and someone will be like, Wood Elves, no! We did allow for the Wood Elves under a condition, which is that you have the Bowmen of Orion that start in the Southlands, and so we did allow the Wood Elves to come as long as they did not bring a legendary lord, since Orion and Durthu start in the Old World in Athel Loren. So we did allow for the Wood Elves to come with the Glade Lord and represent the Bowmen of Orion. We would have also allowed for vampires with a Lamian Lord or a Strigoi for the Strigoi Empire, so we're open to ideas like that as we do this, like as far as not all the sub-factions are playable, but as long as they're represented, we're open to it. Anyway, so hopefully you all enjoy this one. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. As far as the factions here, Itza is going to be represented by Gorok, the White Lizard, and he was picked because we expected to be up against a whole bunch. This just looks wrong. I don't know what's going on here, but oh. I'm gonna screenshot that. Maybe. Okay. Anyway, we're not gonna talk about what we see right here. Anyway, here's Gorok. Gorok is up front. He is leading a huge army of Saurus warriors and Temple Guard. These are the Temple Guardsmen here. Well, actually, I think these are some of the Saurus warriors. My bad. Yeah. So here's some Saurus warriors. In the back, there is a unit of Star Chamber Guardians and Standard Temple Guard. I do believe there are 5 Saurus warriors up front, 2 Saurus spears, 1 on either flank, and then 2 Temple Guards. So Gorok is providing the mainline infantry, and he is supported by a Skink Priest, Lore of Beast, with a Manticore summon only, and then a Skink Priest, Lore of Heavens, which meant to be Wind Blast and Curse the Midnight Wind, but I accidentally brought Harmonic Convergence instead of Wind Blast, so my bad. As for for Lokir, why can't I remember the name of his? Is it Blessed Dread? Yeah, Blessed Dread. I was losing it for a minute. So Lokir's here with the Blessed Dread. He is on his dragon, and he is playing more of a cavalry support role with a few frontline infantry and a bolt thrower just for diversionary tactics. So there are a few Dread Spears up front, and then he's got the Knights of the Ebon Claw, Cold One Knights, and some Dark Riders with shields to act as chaff for the more expensive cavalry. So Lokir also has a Sorceress, Lore of Beast, and she will be supporting with the Manticore summon as well. The Manticore summons are intended to be good against ranged units, to be able to drop extra stuff into a battle against ranged. So basically you summon the Manticore and then pounce on the ranged units. He's also brought the Sisters of the Singing Doom here, which will be a good support for Footlords like Skrulk, and who knows what Skrulk is doing. But yeah, anyway, so Teclis is here with his Order of Lore Masters. He's got the Fireborn and some Dragon Princes, a Frostheart Phoenix, and there are some Handmaidens escorting Teclis here. You can see one on either side of him. So Teclis doesn't like to roll into battle without his ladies to help support. And then he's also got a Star Dragon out here on the far right flank. And then as for Clan Pestilence, you all saw the position Skrulk is in, and maybe we should never speak of it again. And then the Doom Flayers, and then really outside of a few Plague Monks and Death Runners, mostly just chaff. So the Skaven player being asked to be chaffed. I mean, could you expect such a thing? So a lot of Skaven Slaves up front, 5 Skaven Slaves, and then some Skaven Slave Slingers, really just meant to absorb charges and fire and act as chaff for our more important infantry. So that is Team Lustria in a nutshell. Basically an infantry-heavy, shielded rush force with heavy cavalry support, both air and ground. And the idea is to overrun the other factions if they decide to be skirmishy. And skirmishy is indeed the way that the Southlands has decided to play. So let's take a look at it. They have a Hell Pit Abomination out here. with Clan Moors, and Clan Moors is actually led by a Graceslayer here, and there's going to be several units of Gutter Runners, as well as a whole bunch of Clan Rats leading the way for Clan Moors, and then there are Warp Lightning Cannons, so 3 Warp Lightning Cannons on this flank. They will be able to cause tremendous damage from range. They are backed up by we're going to call them the Bowmen of Orion, even though we know that's not the actual sub-faction here. But we've got the Glade Lord, and she has a Waystalker back here supporting. Then there are a bunch of Glade Guard mixed in here. We've got some Glade Guard, some with Hagbane tips, just all kind of mixed in here. Starfire Shafts, tons of range support from the Bowmen, which is what we would expect, right, from a Wood Elf faction. And then they have the Treekin up front to add a little bit of tank to a Skaven line, so that makes a lot of sense. And then there is a Tree Man in the back supporting it with the Wood Elves as well. You can see another Treekin out here. I like the use of the Treekin along with the cheaper Skaven infantry. It does add a whole lot of staying power to your main line. Now, as for the Chevaliers, they are not led by Rapans this time. They are led by a Prophetess Lore of Life, and she is supported by Henry Le Massif and a couple of Royal Pegasus Knights for kind of a goon squad in the air. And then as for the rest of the Bretonnian the Chevaliers here, they have some Knights Errant placed along here, along with some mounted Yeoman Archers, and then the Companions of Kinel and the Defenders of the Fleur de Lis. So some very nice units that they've brought along here to help support, as far as helping to support the infantry fight. Definitely expected Bretonnia to go cavalry heavy, and they are. They've got quite a force there. Now, as for the Tomb Kings faction, they are actually led by Settra the Imperishable. I'll swing over here and let you see him. So Settra is atop his Kimrian War Sphinx. He's supported by 2 Tomb Scorpions and some Caskets of Souls. So obviously the range is going to be tremendously powerful from the Southlands side, and they're going to have to do their damage from range and then hold out for as long as they can in melee. And to help hold out, the Tomb Kings have brought some spearmen and halberds in the back, and then skeleton warriors also to act as chaff on this flank. So that is Team Southlands. You all can put in your vote now in the comments for who you think is going to win it, and we will get this thing started. So the Warp Lightning Cannons, no big surprise here, are going to be the opening salvo, and I do think they were targeted on the Bolt Thrower, which is really good for us. That's what we want. And see the Skaven Slaves here absorbed a unit or fire from the Casket of Souls. Any shot that you can absorb with the chaff because someone's on fire at will is good. And I'll take this moment to kind of just say, when you are using artillery, make sure that you don't leave it on fire at will at the beginning, because these first few volleys would have done tremendous damage to Saros Warriors or Temple Guards or other units, and should definitely have been targeted there early, rather than wasting a shot or two on chaff, especially when you're getting rushed like the enemy is here. See, the Skaven Slaves have already closed the distance and are engaging in melee, and the Plague Monks right behind them, though they are getting shot in the face by some Gutter Runners, and they're not going to like that. It's going to hurt considerably. Now, out on the flanks, Bretonnia has pushed its Yeoman Archers to pester the right flank of Team Lustria. And you can see otherwise, Team Lustria is just really interested in closing the distance, because if we skirmish for very long, since we can't, we're going to get absolutely wrecked. So you can see the fight is starting. And I think the key here for Team Lustria is to not get blobbed. And then the key for Team Southlands is to try and force those blobs and then use their artillery and support units to nuke them. I mean, absolutely nuke them. Over here, the Skaven line ended up blobbing a little bit into some Saros Warriors and Dread Spears. This is a great engagement for Team Lustria, because no matter how many numbers get thrown into here, unless some magic or support comes in, that will favor Team Lustria. Right here in the middle, the first units of Clan Rats go down, and the Treekin are going to have to come in to fill the void, and they will be able to fill that void for a considerable period of time. As we swing over towards the right-hand flank, I'm actually speed up the scroll speed a little. You can see that engagements have begun with some of the Tomb King's infantry, and Itza is keeping its forces kind of without over-blobbing into a fight. Over here, some Skeleton Chariots ended up getting popped by Dragon Princes and the Handmaidens, and you can see that Bretonnia is falling back to some of their archery support. As well they should. They should be very careful. Teclis has brought a significant force here, and he's even supported by Saros Spears now as well. And you can see that the Tomb Scorpion got off on its own, gets zerged. This is great, because it was actually a real threat to our infantry over here. So Team Lustria is starting off strong here. Now, as for the skirmish goes, on the right-hand flank of the battle, Team Southlands is causing some tremendous damage, and it is going to be a tricky fight over here, though we do have some support from the Sorceress of Beast and the Help Hit Abomination on this flank. I'll go ahead and zoom in down here a little bit, just give you all an idea what's going on. That support is going to be very handy over here. You can see Earthblood was being used to keep the Skaven in the fight, though it's a little bit late over here. The Skaven have taken a big flanking maneuver and a breath spell from Lord Skrulk, so they're in rough shape. Now at this point, Gorok and Itza are going to lead a charge right up the middle with the Temple Guard and try and tie down any remaining units they can. Some of the Saurus warriors in the middle were initially beaten back. You can see here a very nice spell from Clan Moors forcing the retreat of the Temple Guard, almost getting them with some major damage, so very fortunate that the Temple Guard avoided that one for Team Lustria, but a nice play by Team Southlands. You can see here that as the Temple Guard get blobbed, Team Southlands is trying to hit them with artillery and help support that fight, and right now the Glade Guard are going after the Skink Priest. You can see on the left-hand flank for Team Lustria, it is a very, very difficult fight at the moment, whereas the right-hand flank is a completely different story. The right-hand flank is just an absolute roll right now for Team Lustria, so Team Southlands will need to try and wrap up the left flank soon because they have some serious trouble headed towards their back lines at this point. So you can see all the Dragon Princes, the Fireborn, the Star Dragon, the Cold Ones, or Dread Knights, all pushing that way. There are some Tomb Guards out here with halberds that could potentially stand in the way of all this cavalry force, but they've got Saurus spears to contend with, and also Saurus warriors in the middle that are trying to back off of Cetra rather than get all damaged. You can see that the Saurus warriors are looking to split these gaps and start moving the way through the gaps, maybe towards some of the skirmish units. You can see here the Star Chamber Guardians holding down the center. As the Temple Guards came in later rather than earlier in the fight, they avoided a lot of the fire and are now becoming a force to be reckoned with in the middle, especially seeing as that the Team Southlands was heavily dependent on archery and ranged. If I pause it here for just a moment, about 5 minutes into the battle, the balance bar relatively even, a little bit in favor of Team Lustria right now. If we take a look at what is left, Team Southlands is really going to have to watch out for the artillery. And look at this, a unit of Death Runners getting all the way in behind the Warp Lightning cannons of Team Southlands. So definitely a problem. There were summoned Manticores as well that have been diving into the archers and forcing Team Southlands to defend them. But just look at the flank coming here from the Blessed Dread and the Order of Lore Masters. You've got Slaaneash's Harvesters, Knights of the Ebon Claw, Cold One Knights, a Sorceress Lore of Beast, Lokir on a Black Dragon, Frostheart Phoenix, Star Dragon. Yeah, I mean, this is a supremely deadly force that is swinging in towards the back lines as it cleans up the forces that were defending the back lines for Team Southlands. And you can see that this epic brawl slogs on in the middle. Archers here going to get some work done against the Saurus. The Saurus don't have a whole lot of choice but to charge in and go after them to try and tie down those archers, though they will likely die in the attempt because they'll get overwhelmed by units back there. Look at this Temple Guard holding out like absolute beast in a fight against Treekin, a Help Hit Abomination, and some Clan Rats. Meanwhile, Gorok has fought his way through a unit of skeletons to get to one of the Caskets of Souls and try to take it out. And you can see that the flank is coming in hard now. Some of these Tomb Guard over here end up getting pinched really hard between two Saurus and the Slaaneash's Harvesters, but Cetra pays them back with a Vortex spell that does do some pretty solid damage. Cetra, meanwhile, is being engaged by Lokir and a summoned Manticore, and Cetra did manage to get caught by the Sisters of the Singing Doom, though there is Warp Lightning Cannon attempting to support Cetra in this fight, and that's really important because Lokir does have a lot of advantages. Look at this, just in the nick of time, the Saurus warriors move away from an assault of stone, coming in from the Life Prophetess, I believe, and really avoided that narrowly, as they would have gotten caught and destroyed there, fighting those Tomb Guard. Meanwhile, the Treekin are kind of holding a last line, but they are in over their heads almost. I mean, they're pretty tall. And you got the Tree Man here helping to defend as well. Another summoned Manticore from the Skink Priest this time. So the pressure on the ranged units of Team Southlands will only be increasing, though even with that pressure, they have managed to take out the Skink Priest now at this point, the Lore of Heaven's Priest on a Stegodon. He's getting smacked while trying to take out the Greyseer. and a really good effort here by them to do the damage that they need to. The Eagle is trying to ward off the Manticore, but the Manticore manages to join the Saurus Spears in fighting some of these Blade Guard, and a vicious fight ensues. You can see that the Order of Loremasters kind of taking their time driving everything out of the backlines. They don't want those units to be able to come back, and then at the final, the Order of Loremasters will swing in, and it looks like at this point basically be able to close the door on Team Southlands. So this was kind of your classic rush versus ranged matchup here, and these matches can go either way, honestly. It really depends on how the two teams pick their armies and how they play it. At this point, with the right flank having gotten swung so heavily in the favor of Team Lustria, it ended up making all the difference, because then that flank was able to collapse in. And although Team Southlands did really good on their right flank, our left flank for a long time, they weren't able to wrap it up quickly. There was a little too much infantry blobbing on that flank that allowed the Team Lustria to really kind of gain the advantage there, and they got the right support at the right moment with that Sorceress, Lore of Beast, and the Hell Pit Abomination and Rat Ogres making their way around the flank, because a lot of the mobile troops from Team Southlands were busy rolling up the right flank, trying to stop the really huge movement there from Teclis and his cavalry, as well as Lokir and his cavalry. So it ended up being a pretty epic fight. The Saurus warriors from Itza and the Temple Guard ended up being really clutch here, and that was a purposeful pick on my part. I played as Itza, knowing that Saurus warriors would be a good matchup against just about anything that could come from these factions. So providing the line of Saurus was very good for us here. They're shielded. They do really well against unarmored infantry or low armor infantry, which is what you're likely to come up against with these factions. So it ended up being a solid pick for us in this particular case. See there, a nice pendulum coming in late. And then basically Team Southlands doing everything they can to hold this together. But army losses are starting to mount, and they just won't be able to do it. See the Great Eagle and the Glade Lord fighting bravely, despite the overwhelming odds at this point. They are tied down by Slaaneash's Harvesters, and that's not going to be a good time, especially as Lokir comes down and lands in the middle of that. So a pretty epic brawl. If you all want to see more Clash of Continents, we could do this. Like I said, it's not going to be as fair for certain continents like Oath 1. Old World is a huge one too that's going to have a ton, but I was kind of thinking about separating Old World from like the Chaos Waste, kind of creating our own continent out of the Chaos Waste. So that would be Warriors of Chaos and all of their legendary lords. You could throw in some Beastmen with them, I think is a fair call, because they usually use the Warherd of Chaos that could represent that. And then you could throw in Norska into that mix. I think that would all be fair to throw in for them. And then, of course, you have Nagarond, which would be Clan Rictus, Nagarond, Haggrief, Harganeth, Cult of Pleasure, Alethanar, the Nagaraith, I guess would be the right way to say it. So you'd have all those factions that could come in for Nagarond. I think that would be a pretty fun one too. So we got those. If you all want to see more Clash of Continents, let us know. We're kind of thinking about the Badlands too, and how we handle, like maybe you combine Badlands and the Darklands in order to have enough there, because then you'd have the Orcs. You could probably have a Dwarf faction play in that, and then you get Clan Eshin and Haggrief could technically count into that. So I don't know, that might be another one that we can come up with. Not exactly a continent, but pretty close. Be like a clash of these different areas. Let's take a look at the stats here. So appreciate everybody who played. Lol, Thane, Feisty Fox, Aletzio, Orella Doria. I'm always getting that one on. Stormrunner. I don't thank myself because I'm a jerk. And then Regina, thanks for joining in. Take that, Air. Just got dunked on, man. Anyway, so Clan Pestilence here did a great job being the chaff in this battle. And honestly, the left-hand flank was very clutch here. Orella Doria really held it up. My Saurus Warriors were doing good, but there was a lot of numbers there. And eventually the Saurus Warriors gave out. And the Clan Pestilence kind of helped carry on the fight on that left flank and kept it going for the entire battle. And in fact, I think eventually was kind of actually winning over there, which was really good because it took Regina a while to be able to get her forces all the way around the map, clean up everything, and get all the way back in for a rear charge. So it was kind of nice that we had one flank holding that long so that the other one could completely collapse in. Regina's forces accomplished exactly what we needed them to here, which was provide a very dominant cavalry push with Teclis, and then they were supported very nicely by Lokir's cavalry here as well, Slanisha's Harvesters, the Cold One Knights, the Knights of the Ebon Claw, all doing some good work. Those Sisters of the Singing Doom ended up being very important too by rampaging a couple of key units. And then my troops were able to hold up the front line. I mean, Gorak got in and smashed about 85 skeletons, as you can see here. And then all of his infantry did a good job. So I actually kind of like this because it ended up being a themed army for Gorak as well, since he's kind of the leader of all the Saras. And then Lowell here with the Skaven, his Warp Lightning cannons put down a savage beating on several units. And I mean a savage beating. It was a lot of firepower. Very fun to see those things going at it over there. And then Thane of Turin here, bringing in the range support. I like the pick of the tree units here too to add some stability to an otherwise shaky infantry line. I think that that's a necessary pick for this, so I think I would have called that one out as a really, really nice pick there. And honestly, I mean, bringing range support as elves, that's what you should do, right? It didn't work out this time, but I mean, if his armies, like on his team, had been able to play a little differently, perhaps, these kind of things can absolutely shred up key units when they get the right opportunity. So definitely don't disagree with any of the pick there. Cetra being able to provide some anti-infantry power while also being a caster, never a bad idea. And then the Scorpions, I think that they knew that they would probably be at an infantry disadvantage, so I think the pick of Cetra and the Scorpions, as well as some Chariots, not a bad idea. They just ended up not being able to pay off a whole bunch because they got zerged by some of the cavalry and monsters from our side, which is exactly what we needed to happen. And then at that point, it left their infantry up against a lot of Saras and other things that weren't very favorable, which worked in the favor of Team Lustria here, obviously. The Caskets got a bunch of kills. Neither one of them picked up a Chevron, so I don't know how meaningful those were, but it just gives you an idea of how quick these Caskets can get kills and why we were trying to rush in and put the fight on them quickly, because these guys can do amazing damage over the course of a battle. Especially when you think about like a Saras Warrior or a Temple Guard unit, those units can't spaghetti line very well. They kind of stay in a thicker block, and they are just mulched by Caskets of Souls, so I was very happy to close the distance and start fighting so I didn't get mulched by them. And then Alezio here running the Chevaliers. I like the Life Prophetess, don't see that very often, plus she can get up in the air and support the Pegasi and Henry de la Massif, which is always a fun pick. Knights Errant, the Companions of Kinel, and some other fun picks in here. Where was the other one? Royal Pegasus. Companions of Kinel. I thought there was one more Regiment of Renown. Oh yeah, right here it is. The Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis, my bad. So we had them in there as well. So thank you, Alezio, for pulling up a fun Chevaliers Daily on this. Obviously some good kills on the Royal Pegasus Knights. They were moving around the battlefield, getting some good damage done, and then the Prophetess of Life obviously was trying to support different infantry fights with her Earthblood, so nice support role there. Anyway, thank you for everybody who played. Hope you all enjoyed another big 4v4 battle. As always, please keep leaving your ideas in the comments. I have been reading them, and we are constantly trying to come up with ideas. If you see an idea you like in the comments, upvote it a bunch, and I'll try and take notice of as much of that as I can. And if you want to play in these battles, feel free. Come join us in the Discord. There's a link in the description. It's a great place to meet folks and play a bunch of awesome battles. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. Hope to see you again soon with some more Total War Warhammer 2 action.